Today, our love of baseball hits a off-season mark high as we're joined by Mandy Bell. Mandy, your friend Sarah Langs may be the driver of the baseball is the best movement, but I don't think anyone personifies that love of the game more than our guest today, Mandy Bell of MLB.com. So happy to have you again, Mandy, and good to talk to you. It's been a while.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And it's always good when we start things off with a Sarah reference. I'm all for that.
Yeah, in fact, I had thrown it out inside our Discord. People just wanted to ask you anything, and a couple of people just wanted you to talk about Sarah Lang. So we'll do that later coming up in the show.
Okay.
But I know that love of the game always shines through just in the way that you write and the way that you tweet about things. I think people just recognize how much passion you have for the game. And I want to talk about that coming up later on in the show. But just to kind of get us into things here in the off season and some good vibes, where does that positivity that you always have come from? Because I'll tell you, I cannot echo that as much as you can. You far surpass me in any of the positivity. I feel like I'm always on the other end of that spectrum.
I mean, it's baseball. Like, how can we not love it? I think that's just the only answer. I mean, I grew up just a huge baseball fan. And so to be able to just watch it, write about it, talk about it every single day, I'm all for it.
I'll be real with you. I get jaded sometimes. I get, just I think
We all
all
do.
of us
I do too. I get it.
I think all of us in anything that you do, you tend to, I don't want to say you tend to look at the negative side of things, but it's hard to escape that at times. But I always will give you so much credit because you never seem to lose that in how you write about the game, how you tweet about the game, the photos that you share. So it's good that you can come here and help balance me out here on this spectrum.
As long as I can provide something, I'm all for it. I mean, when you talk to Sarah every day, it's hard for that not to be contagious, truly. I mean, she texts me in all caps all the time about everything that she sees in every single game that she's watching every day. So, I mean, it's just contagious.
We're into the off season now, Mandy, and we have the award vote. What is it? Award voting week. We're making it
Yeah.
an actual thing. Award voting week, and let's start there. You were around Stephen Vogt pretty much every single day from the minute that they made that hire. We've talked about just so glowingly all the great things that he really did in his first year, and I don't know what the expectation level was for him, but even just being part of that first press conference, I thought, this is the right guy for this job. I don't know what he's going to do as far as X's and O's and managing on the field, but as far as managing personalities, he had that down. And we've kind of echoed that since the year has been over. What was your perspective just watching him navigate his first year? What were you impressed with? And maybe kind of what do you think as he learns more about this job, maybe even some areas that you would be excited to see him improve in?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on the second that we had that introductory press conference with him. It just seemed like he was the right fit. Even though he had zero experience, it just seemed like he had that charisma, enthusiasm, self-deprecating nature that resembled Tito, but was different enough to be a change of pace. So it was intriguing at first, but I think it was easy to have low expectations because he had zero experience, and none of us thought that this would be the outcome because the roster that had a sub 500 record last year didn't really change that much, except for Austin Hedges and Ben Lively maybe being some additions over the last offseason. And
you mean the offensive and pitching MVPs is what you're talking about there?
Correct, exactly. So we all thought that they would win 105 games, and well, no.
Clearly.
So it was just like, okay, this could be a rocky year, maybe a rebuilding year, but no, it wasn't. And manager of the year is always so difficult because there's not really tangible evidence that you can use to say this is why I'm voting this way. It's all about narrative. It's all about who exceeded expectations. It's all the same things. But I feel like with Vogt, this is like the closest that you can possibly get to actually having some concrete proof as to why you would go that direction. Because this is a bullpen that lost. Now, I know James Karinchak, we now know, had a really rough year and couldn't really get his velocity back. And there's a lot of question marks about his future. But at the time, coming into spring training, James Karinchak and Trevor Stephan were supposed to be big guys for this bullpen. and they lost them in spring. And they only had Clase really as for sure. Sam Henches was hurt at the time and then obviously got hurt again. But they were just like, what are they going to do? They don't have a bullpen. And they pieced it together with starters turned relievers, with guys who have never pitched in the big leagues. And they just sort of figured it out and had to lean on the bullpen more than they did the rotation. And the way that Vogt was able to manage a bullpen, I think, is like the number one way that you can judge how a manager is doing in a season. And the way that he was able to do that, use them as much as he did without anyone having burnout until really the postseason. But you make it through the regular season and everyone was as sharp as they were. And it was the best bullpen in the majors. It was the best bullpen, the fourth best bullpen since 95. If you go by ERA, like you look at all these things, I think that spoke for itself. Then you have obviously a division title. And it just seemed like everyone in the room would be just effusive in their way of just saying, I want to play for this guy. He's a leader. He's someone that I'm running into the trenches with. And it just seemed like he had a buy-in that you don't necessarily always see. And especially for someone in their first season, it was really impressive. And I can understand why people would have a strong feeling about having him win, because it just seemed like he makes sense.
Yeah, and the manager of the year, it's like it has to be set up a certain way where the team has low expectations, right? And then they overachieve those expectations. We all look for a reason. It must be the manager. That guy earns the manager of the year. Look at the years that Tito won it. It was always the year that nobody expected the Cleveland was going to be good, and then they were, and then you heap rewards on the manager. But in this case, there were clear indications that he was doing a pretty darn good job managerial. Now, is he the best manager in the game or just in the American League this year? I don't know. Just because a team is good, does that mean that somehow now the manager has less of an impact? You know, he comes back next year. Are we going to be saying the same glowing things? Like, you set the bar a little bit higher for yourself. So I'm interested to see kind of where he learns and grows from this year. But the thing that he had down from minute one was just the buy-in from the players. And God, that is so important in this role where it's 162 games and you have to have everybody pulling in the same direction over this marathon. It's the toughest thing to fake. And go back to the end of the year where, was it the Manzardo home run where he and Naylor embraced, and after the game, Vogt got teary-eyed? And there are times when you see that sort of thing and you can just tell that it's playing it up to the cameras, that this is maybe not as genuine as they're making it look in that moment. But watching him and getting to know him just a teeny bit, but seeing how this year unfolded and kind of hearing stories about the way that Stephen Vogt, just his career unfolded and the people that would run through that wall for him, that was as genuine as of a moment as you'll ever see from a manager, actually tearing up for his players. And you can see why. You know, I'm seeing dads of players on the team tweeting about how they love that their son gets to play for Stephen Vogt. It all just kind of made sense in that moment.
Yeah, and I think that just is a testament to what the players are going home and saying to their families, to their friends, whatever it might be. I mean, it was really small stuff starting in spring training that got the buy-in. I mean, he started the system where each day a different player would have control of the music for the whole day. And everyone was so excited to come in the next day to see who would be appointed the person who was going to be in charge of the music. I mean, it's like grade school kids at some point. So whenever you can just have like the line leader and whatever it might be. They're not
that far removed, Mandy. They're not that far removed from that. So it kind of works.
They're not. Whoever gets to be the line leader for the day is so excited to go home and tell their parents. But I mean, it was just little things like that everyone was so excited to come in and just get to work that day. And just they had very close private meetings that everyone came back into the room smiling, laughing. Like, it just seemed like it was maybe a lighter vibe. Like, it was just different. Like, Tito had his own way of doing the same thing, but it was just a different way of doing it. And so there was just like a lighter approach, it seemed like, this year. And it caused everyone to buy in right off the bat. Now, I think it'll be interesting to see what he learns from year one and how he becomes more confident in year two, because there were a lot of questions that we would ask at different times. And he would say, I don't know. Like, you might need to talk to Carl about that because I don't really know yet. Or you might have to ask Valeka, which obviously not here anymore, but it would just be like, you might have to ask him or that. Well, maybe there will be more of a growth where he feels more confident in answering questions that aren't necessarily where he's working, but he knows enough to understand where this is going to go. So I think that with more confidence, with more experience, it should be better, I would assume, in year two than what it was in year one.
Even for award voting for manager, you no matter how you vote for this award, people are going to be upset. There's going to be somebody upset, even all the way down to manager of the year. And I bring that up for a reason, so stick with me for a minute. But even going back, gosh, I can't remember what year it was, but it was one of the years where Cora and I think Cash were up for it. And it was a toss up between those two. And in that year, I had the manager of the year vote, and I voted for Cash. And when the votes were revealed, on Twitter, somebody made you can see when someone makes a list and they add you to the list. Someone created a list that said people that voted against Cora and added me to this list. And it's like, we're talking about manager of the year. The reason why I say that is because I know what vote you had this year, and you can't tell us the order in which you voted. But this, for AL Cy Young, there has been a conversation just because of how just through the roof Emmanuel Clase was in terms of production in the regular season, going up against a pitcher that, by the way, didn't he win the Triple Crown in Tarek Skubal? Like, he was that fantastic as well. So I ask you, how many sleepless nights did you have just thinking about not only that you want to get it right, but also that no matter what you do, somebody is going to be upset with you. And that's when those votes are revealed, you just have to feel like, I did my homework, I did it as best as I could, and I just got to leave it out there because I can't please everybody.
When I tell you I stared at my empty ballot for 3 straight hours before doing anything, it is not an exaggeration, because I'm sitting there like, how are you supposed to do this? It's so difficult. I mean, in general, it's difficult vote every single year. As much as it seems like it's unanimous in one way or another, like, it's always so time consuming to really dig into everything because you want to make sure you're voting the correct way. Well, when you start understanding, like, okay, well, now there's a reliever who could be thrown into the mix, and you're trying to figure out how the best way to compare apples and oranges, like, you start thinking that, oh, it's just another pitcher. Like, you should be able to just say, who's the best pitcher in the league? You really can't, because how do you value workload, and how do you value high leverage spots, and how their WAR, whatever it might be? It's so difficult when you have a reliever in the mix. And I think it's a testament to Clase already that he's a finalist, that he was able to eclipse that top 3 and get many voters, obviously, across the country to believe that he's in that mix. Because you look back at Zack Britton is the most recent one that pops into my brain. He had numbers almost identical to Clase. He had that sub-1 ERA. He was unbelievable. And you think back to his Cy Young, and I think he was 4th maybe in the voting. Like, he didn't crack that top 3. So you start thinking back, like, this doesn't happen. So I think even no matter what happens after this, no matter what everyone decides and where people put him, I think it's really impressive that he made it this far, because it really is difficult to compare the two. And can we please just have a reliever award already? Because it's so hard, because the other times it's rookie of the year. And it's like, well, how do you compare that to a hitter? And awful. Like, we saw it with, like, Cade Smith. I know Cade Smith is somebody that a lot of people wanted to be in that finalist spot, and he wasn't. And it's just like, well, how do you compare him to a hitter? I don't understand how any of this works.
Yeah, we just wanted to make it easier for us voters. That's
please, please, someone think of me.
But it was a little surprising that Smith wasn't a finalist, because when you're looking at who truly had impactful rookie years, the thing that's difficult for a reliever, because Cade Smith had one of the best relief seasons in Cleveland's franchise history, but because it's a reliever, he's just not going to accumulate the same WAR. Travis Sawchik and I on our Patreon show, patreon.com/SalviasGodcast, come join us. We were talking about how perhaps some of the more advanced analytics it's going too far to say ruined award voting, but maybe has ruined some of the discourse around it. And maybe there's a mentality here where sort of in polling, you see a lot of people like in the election, everyone herds together because no one wants to be the outlier. And now you can just go to Fangraphs and you can sort by WAR, you can sort by win probability added. You can do these sorts of things, but it's almost tougher now with so many analytics out there to be the one that says, "No, I'm gonna go this different direction and stand out from everybody else." Do you think maybe we have too much of that paralysis by analysis when we're looking at this award voting? And I feel like I want to get it right, and I subscribe to these being meaningful analytics and WAR. I don't want to throw it out, but also is kind of fun when you can bring some other elements into it that maybe aren't necessarily just looking at something I can see on a spreadsheet. It's tough.
Yes, all of that. Yes, I think it's the sort of like where you hear a manager talk about when he wants to go to the bullpen, and you think like, if you're trying to leave that starter in one more out or whatever, the analytics will tell you this is the time to pull him, but you have that gut feeling where you know that you need to ride him out just a little bit longer. It's that feeling where you have that gut feeling where you know that maybe the analytics don't back it, but this guy was so important to a team or was so good that it doesn't necessarily matter that the analytics might not say he should be a top 3. You just know you should go there. It takes a lot of guts now to try to stray from that, because everyone, as you already alluded to earlier, will come at you on social media and say, look at these stats. Here's all these things. How can you justify it? And it's just like you lose that gut reaction of this guy should be there no matter what the numbers say. So I think it's difficult to go that different way now. And I think that's why you don't see Cade Smith, because it's difficult to say that a reliever has more value than a hitter. It's just really hard to say. But I think anyone who watched every one of Cleveland's games, even only a handful of Cleveland's games, can attest to how unbelievable his season was and how critical he was to their success, because I don't know where the Guardians are this year if they don't have Cade Smith in general, and even just on the opening day roster. Like, he carried them from day one when he came out and had 5 strikeouts in his debut. Like, that was ridiculous, and he set the tone there. So I think it's tough. And I even had, during our postseason coverage, we have a couple extra MLB reporters come in and help out whenever there's series going on. And so we had some reporters come in, and I had one helping me with some Guardians coverage, and they had a Rookie of the Year vote, and they were like, uh-oh. When they saw him pitch every day, they were like, you know what? I don't think I got it until I saw it, because I think I'm the problem here. And I'm like, yep, I think a lot of people would feel that way if they saw him pitch just a couple times.
Yeah, you think of who are the best at the job that they had, and how much do you penalize a pitcher just because that's the role that's picked for them? Now, people are in a role of being a reliever, not a starter, because at some point probably someone along the line said, you're probably not going to be a great starter, but you have this stuff that could work out of the bullpen. But it still is a vital part of this game, and I hate to overlook it just because they're a reliever. I think the value, like, look at Skubal, the season that he has, the volume that he pitches, that stuff's important. And volume over the course of a season, like comparing him and Clase, is still extremely important. If I had a vote, it would have been tough. I would have looked at every single intricate statistic I could find. I would have voted for Skubal. I think you can't ignore the depth or the volume of his innings. But when you're talking about truly great things that you don't see often, like Clase had a season like that, or Smith, is, in terms of being a rookie, had a season like that. And it's tough to just say, oh, well, you didn't pitch as many innings as this other guy, so you don't matter. That's what sucks about it, is because it feels like when you put down the list, you would say, oh, I think Skubal's 1 and Clase probably should be 3. And it always comes across like, oh, no, I think Clase just stinks compared to these other. You're just like, no, they all had fantastic years, but I have to put somebody first. And I got to go with the guy that did it every 5 days and gave his team 5, 6, 7 innings on those days.
It's hard. One of the hardest things that you have to do. It's just trying to figure out how to compare all of this. And once again, going back to the writers, it's so much easier on us if the relievers don't have that type of year. So maybe moving forward, if we can just have a PSA of just either have a reliever award, or let's just make sure you
No, they
guys
don't
just
want
calm
that.
down a little. Let's
They
just
don't
calm
want to
down a
make
little.
it easy for you. Just like
I know.
Hall of Fame voting, someday you'll be doing that. But they don't want to. You could say, let's make this easier. Who's on the ballot? Who's off the ballot? Who do we have to eliminate because maybe they did some things during their careers that should eliminate them from the ballot? No, they would rather just walk away and say, you guys handle it. You guys figure it out.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay taking my nice time getting to that point in my career because that sounds stressful.
Speaking of stressful, I would imagine when you sit down to come up with a new uniform, there's some stress level there. Because it seems like whenever anything like that happens, the most loud individuals you hear are that it could even be a loud minority, but it seems like the majority of people do not like change. And the Guardians just rolled out some new uniforms. And maybe it's just because of the bubble that I'm in on social media. I've tried to step away from being like too far, expanding the bubble too far, and I think I've procured a nice group of people that I follow that are coming at this from a well informed, maybe not so trolly aspect. But it seems like, Mandy, most of the response I saw to those uniforms was pretty positive, which is just, you don't see that very often when you make a change that most people think, hey, this is pretty good. The worst thing I saw was I'm indifferent to it or it's just fine. But it was no, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing that's anyone ever has put together. What were you thinking? So what were your thoughts on the uniforms? Just, I know some subtle changes, but they were changes.
Yeah, they were. And I think it's good to have some change. I think it gives some fans things to talk about in the off season like this just did. So I think it's good to have some things be mixed up and create some sort of small buzz whenever there is a time there's not really anything going on for any buzz to be about the team. So I thought that was good. And I agree. I thought almost all of the response that I saw was pretty positive. The thing that I saw that was all over the map were some people saying that meme where Pam Beasley is holding up the photos saying, what's the difference? Trying to find the difference, and it's the same picture. Saw a lot of that, but then I also saw where people were saying, these are completely new. I cannot believe it. I'm like, how can people have this completely different response to the same thing? Of some people saying these are just the same, what did they do? And some people saying these are completely different looks. That's where I was like, okay, well, I guess some people think it's completely different. Now, I think there was one, what was it? Like the blue uniforms that were the
Yeah.
biggest difference, where they have like the big diamond C. I think that was the biggest one. Everything else was just like some trim or whatever it might be that's a little bit different. But even that stuff, I think it's good. I think it's good to mix it up. I think it's good to have something different. And it creates, I'm sure, some buzz right before the holiday season. And I'm sure that's considered in this planning.
What? Are you
No,
kidding?
it's probably just coincidental. It's probably just
Sure.
coincidental. Um, but it gets everyone wanting to go buy stuff and get excited about the season again. And when you have a fun year, it's critical to continue that hype into the next season and not just let it die out, because I feel like in 2022 it kind of just died out, where after the season they didn't really make like crazy moves. I mean, they tried to build on it. You think back to the Mike Zunino and Josh Bell stuff, but it's like there just wasn't the same level of hype, especially after the first month of the year didn't go as well, and it just sort of seemed like it didn't, I don't know, it just didn't gain the steam that I thought it would after the ridiculous season they had in 2022. So I think anything you can do to keep building on this, all for it.
And it's just certainly got to go far beyond, hey, we made some changes to the
No,
uniforms.
that's it.
Like,
That's all they need to do. I think we can just stop now, right?
but having said that, I liked that it seemed like, I don't know if this is coincidental or not, but it seemed like they looked at the success of the City Connect uniforms,
Yeah.
and where they were thinking, how can we integrate one of these uniforms to be sort of similar, sort of take some of those same vibes. And I thought they did that with those blue uniforms. And when I was looking at it, the funny thing is, oftentimes, like, I'll see an initial photo when they're released, and I will come up with you get your initial gut, like, I like this, I don't like this. I remember even when they rolled out the red uniform, and I thought, oh yeah, that's slick, I really like that. And I saw that on the field, and I didn't like it as much. And once you see it, like, you have to actually see it in action before you
Yeah.
know. And there were certain players that were wearing these new ones that I thought, oh, I don't know if I like it. And then I would see like Jose in the uniform, and it's like, oh yeah, future Hall of Famer in that uniform. That looks fantastic. But I came away, I really liked the blue ones. I think those blue ones look really sharp.
Yeah, I think it'll be, like you said, I think I need to see it like in person and see it in action because a picture can be completely different. So, but yeah, I think it's any type of thing like this is good. I think anytime you can get people talking about your team like this, it's a good thing. So I think it should be fun.
Now, if they're going to talk about this team with the winter meetings ahead, one of the things that has been talked about, like one of the few things that people have talked about, is this team potentially trading their cleanup hitter. It's like, that's kind of like what you're saying. Is that really what is building on the positive momentum that was just put forward in 2024? But we also understand that this is the way this club operates for I don't know, the last 2 decades. It seems like anytime a guy gets to the end of their control, they're going to look to trade him. But this situation, it's not as clear cut as, well, they can't afford him, so they have to trade him away. I'm not sure that they can't afford Josh Naylor. I think they probably actually could afford Josh Naylor. The question is, Mandy, is this a guy that, you know, where he's at in his career, where his age is this a guy you want to commit to for multiple years? Do you think he's going to continue to be a guy that's like 20% above league average for the next 3, 4, 5 years? And also, they've got another guy like Manzardo who plays a similar position. They've got some other cats in the organization that might soon be first base DH types as well. It kind of complicates this, but at the same time, he also is that 20% above league average bat that this offense, I don't think they could just let get away. They need to be finding ways to improve the offense. And trading away one of those guys, it kind of goes against that. So where are you at just on just some of the conversation here that's been had in terms of what the future looks like for Naylor and this organization?
I get stuck in this cycle where you think, okay, it can make sense because how are they going to get talent this offseason? They have to get something. They definitely need starting pitching help. And you start thinking, how are they going to get it? Now, they are never the team that's the big spenders in free agency. They're the team that likes to trade. And so if you start thinking of what they could trade, where do they trade from? And are they able to get enough out of their farm system to get a guy that they like a top of the line starter? Are they able to get someone who's ready to make an impact next year by just relying on some of their best prospects? Are they willing to give up some of their best prospects? Can they tap into their bullpen depth? And would that be enough if they're not trying to get rid of Clase, but they still want to get rid of a significant enough piece that would warrant some talent coming back? And if they don't want that, then where else do they go? So I think, okay, if you move Naylor, you can definitely get something back that's ready to go now, that will be an impactful player. But then is that too much of a detriment to the offense? And how are they then backfilling what the void that he leaves? And is that truly at the end of the day making the team better? Sure, you might get a starter that could help you every fifth day, but you're losing a guy who helps you every single day. So I get stuck in the cycle of I can believe for a second that could help, and then I convince myself that it doesn't help. But then I think, well, how else are they going to get there? And then I go back through the whole circle again. So I don't know. I think in my head, it makes the most sense to start the year with him. And then maybe you capitalize if he has a hot start to the season, you capitalize at the deadline to get a piece, but it doesn't help you with your rotation to start the year next year. And there's more of a delay. So it's difficult. And I can see how they're not quite sure. I can see how they would try to make that deal, and I can see why they would be against it. So it's hard when you know both sides of like why it would or why it wouldn't. But I think that they're going to have to weigh which ones makes more sense.
I think the thing that makes it difficult, Mandy, is you don't know. There's an element of this that you're missing as you're working through it. Is what do you get back?
Hmm.
And that the conversation we've been having for weeks now is I just don't think you're going to get back anything that equals what he brings on the field. And I don't want to
Hmm.
go through this entire like I've said my piece about it. I just don't think it makes sense. But I'm with you. It's just letting this play out and getting more information, not only about where Naylor's at, where Manzardo is at, also where the team is at. What if they, I know no one wants to talk about this. I don't want to bring it up either. Here's this negativity coming back to the surface. But what if they have a rotten start to the season and
Hmm.
then you're to the trade deadline, similar to where they were at in 23, makes it easier to perhaps deal him because I don't think he is a guy. Are you going to give him a qualifying offer? I'm skeptical that he's worth that much in a single year. And even if he has a good year and you have a good year, I feel like you could come back to the table next offseason and figure out a way to get an extension done if you wanted to. So it's just letting this play out is the easiest thing to do, but also I don't have a problem in the next several weeks when they go to the winter meetings if they have these conversations, if they figure out what the interest is elsewhere. Maybe somebody shocks you. I'm very skeptical that that's the case. But also, Mandy, couldn't it also be beneficial if you talk to these teams now and you get a sense of what his market looks like now and how clubs value the sort of player he is right now? Doesn't that also better inform you for next offseason when you want to sit down with Naylor and say, here's the contract that we would like to present you with because we know of the 10 other clubs that might consider bringing you in, here's how they value you, and we can put together an offer that is going to at least equal sort of where they're at in terms of their financials and what they want to commit?
Absolutely. And that's why you can't necessarily hit the panic button as a fan if you start to see those posts on social media where, oh, Josh Naylor's being discussed with this team and this team's calling, where everyone starts going, oh my gosh, why are they trading him? Why would they take calls on him? Well, you take calls on everybody because one, you need to understand, would it be worthwhile? Would some team give up way more than you expected for someone like this? And would it make sense? And two, you learn so much about his own value. You learn about what other teams think of him, and that's critical for you if you're trying to think of a way to keep him long term with your organization. Now, I don't know if they are thinking about that. I know I know there were at least talks last offseason of trying to think of maybe a future, but neither side, I don't really think any side got close on where that was going to end up. So I don't know if they're really far apart, and maybe if they learn a little bit more, they can understand a little better of, okay, here's how we can present this to you. But you don't get that unless you start taking these calls now. So there's going to be a lot of calls. There'll be Josh Naylor rumors. There'll be Emmanuel Clase rumors. There's going to be all of these people because the Guardians not only want to understand how they can make the best trade, and I know fans are painfully reminded of so many trades of players that they wish could stay, but they are also constantly doing homework. Like they never stop working. And so sometimes these calls are just for homework purposes of just trying to figure out exactly what they need to learn about their own players and how they're valued. And that goes down through the pipeline. They like to know what the people think of their prospects as well.
Yeah, there might be a time to be mad, but I feel like I often get pre-mad. Like I start working myself up thinking, well, what if they did this and did this? Then I would be really upset. And it's like, well, hold on, let's see if they actually do those things. Like going back to last offseason, it was Shane Bieber. And it was like I was working myself up, thinking kind of the same thing because he was coming off of an injury and it just hasn't been on the field. So you're going to be trading him when his value's the lowest. Just hold on to this guy. And I would be like working myself up into a lather, just thinking about selling on a guy like Bieber, where if you just keep him, maybe he has a great year. Maybe he has 2 great starts and you don't see him again. But I preferred the scenario where you take the risk, and I found myself getting mad before any of the stuff happened. You got to do your homework. Teams also know how the Guardians operate. So even if they don't put a call out, hey, we're listening on Class A, teams go, hey, this is an organization that likes to maximize the value of their talent when they have it. And there's the worst thing that could happen is Antonetti could laugh and hang up. But
Yep.
maybe we have a conversation about it. Maybe we figure out just kind of where everyone's at on this player. But it does make for winter meetings that the organization says are interesting, but from the outside, we always go, where's all the activity? They swear up and down, well, we've been busy all day. Really? Where are the signings? But it's just it's a weird offseason, Mandy, because I feel like there are a lot of places where they could get better, but I don't know where it's going to come from. And a lot of offseason, I feel like, oh, they're definitely not going to do anything. There's been other off seasons where I feel like, oh, they're definitely going to do something. This one, I'm just throwing my hands up. I don't know what they're going to do. Are they just going to bring back Matthew Boyd, and that's going to be it for the rotation? I could see that. I could see them trading Josh Naylor. I really don't know what this winter meetings are going to look like. Do you have any idea?
I wish, because it'd be so much easier to prepare. Again, thinking about myself. But
That's
no,
all that matters.
exactly. At least you get it. But no, I really have no idea what to expect, because like you said, nothing would surprise me at this point. They could say that they're trading Clase after he's a finalist for the Cy Young after this unbelievable season, and I'd be like, yeah, that checks out. They could tell me that they're trading their cleanup hitter after having such a successful, improved offense type season, and I'd say, yeah, that checks out. You could also tell me that they are not moving anybody and everyone's staying there. And I'm like, well, yeah, look at the season they have. That checks out. Like, it all makes sense. I do think that they're going to get some sort of starting pitching help. They have to. And they've been very clear in how that's going to be their number one priority. Now, does that extend further than talking to Cobb, Boyd, and Bieber is the question. Like, they're already talking to all three of them. Bieber's more attainable now than he ever would have been. It would have been completely off the table past this season if he wasn't hurt. But because he was hurt this year, and now teams are like, do we want to do this now? We'd rather wait and see him come back for a year, see if he's actually functional and can withstand a heavy workload again. And let's see where he bounces back from this Tommy John surgery. So maybe the Guardians can slide in and be like, hey, let's just have one more year. How we help. Our training staff has helped so many guys. We're the perfect pitching department to help you bounce back from this. Like, us. So maybe that works. And maybe they're able to get Bieber and they're able to get Boyd, and then they just call it a day. Maybe they can only get one of them and they just call it a day. But
That's rough though. That's rough though with Bieber,
is.
because he might help you if he goes the Boyd route, which we talked about, that Boyd route being so fantastic because that's not typical. And so signing Bieber, while it uses some of your main avenues to get better, in this case it's just spending money, he also doesn't really help you get that much better, at least not initially. I mean, maybe as soon as halfway through the season he might be able to help you, but
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't do it. Absolutely have this conversation with him, because if you do keep him around and he's still capable of being that front of the rotation arm, that's a good conversation to be having for 2026. But it's also important that you get better in this offseason and build on all of the great things you did. And Bieber, it's tough. It's tough because as much as you would want to feel great about having some sort of ability to keep him here, he doesn't really make you better next year, at least not initially.
No, he doesn't. I think you're looking best case scenario. Absolute best case scenario is June, would be the absolute earliest that you could ever imagine him being back in here. And it still seems hard to believe that would be the case, because you have to think about the rehab assignment that he would have to be on and how lengthy it would be, because it's like a spring training buildup at that point. Even more so because you're trying to make sure you do everything slowly and carefully to make sure that elbow is perfect moving forward. So it's a big gamble to just hopefully get that for the second half of the season and just try to get your way through the first half. I think Boyd is going to be number one on their list, not only because of what he was when he came back, because, my God, he was amazing, which no one would have expected that level of production, but he was unbelievable in the clubhouse, and he is so needed for this young group. I know it seems like 4 straight years now where we talk about how young they are, but they just keep getting younger. I don't know how they keep doing it, but he is critical for that. And he was only there really in the big league clubhouse since mid-August. And he's the guy going around the room consoling everyone at the end of the season when they're all crying. We walk into the clubhouse and Tanner Bybee's just crying in his arms. And it's not even just his teammates. Like, coaches are coming up to him crying and he's consoling them. Like, he just was such a positive addition to this room of just having some sort of leadership. And to pair that with Hedges, now that we know that he's coming back, the leadership that you can get from those guys. I know it sounds ridiculous, and I've had a lot of people message me or post or in my mentions or whatever about, oh my gosh, well, Hedges, who cares about his leadership? Like, look at his numbers. And it's just like, yeah, I get that. But it is underrated and not talked about enough how critical that is. And I think that helped with the buy-in. I don't know if they buy in as quickly without Hedges in that room this year to help back up and one up everything that Vogt is saying. So that chemistry was really, really important to this group's success. And to have those two pieces would be huge next year, not just on the field, but off the field. So I think Boyd's number one, but you looked at the rotation. They need more help than just one guy. So I don't know how else they're going to go about getting that.
Yeah, and certainly somebody that we're not really thinking about today probably needs to step up and reclaim one of those spots, whether it's Tristan,
yeah,
whether it's Logan Allen. Somebody has to kind of reemerge back into that picture to really have the depth that this organization covets. Because because it would be a great thing to bring back a Matthew Boyd. I agree with everything you said. He's a perfect fit for what this club needs right now. Having said that, they had Matthew Boyd at the end of the year, and they need to find a way to be better than when they just had Matthew Boyd. Some of that has to come internally. Gavin Williams has got to take a massive step forward to kind of follow in the shoes of Tanner Bybee. Now, some of that's health. Unfortunately for Gavin, he was just so far behind the eight ball because he just didn't have that normal build-up into the season. I'm hopeful that one of those sorts of build-ups in spring training, knock on wood, he is able to maybe achieve more of that front of the rotation arm, unlock that, sort of more of what we saw toward the tail end of 2023. But for as much as bringing back a Boyd would help in that situation, and it feels like it would be a great fit, it's still going to take some internal growth, and it's probably going to also take a guy, like they're going to need to find another Ben Lively situation where they just unearth somebody, this gem that nobody saw coming. This organization does it from time to time. They're going to need to do that again, I would think.
And how often is it where you sit here and you say, okay, if they get Boyd back, you just need Gavin Williams to take a huge step forward. You need Tristan McKenzie to be able to reclaim his spot. It wouldn't hurt if Logan Allen did the same thing. And then Joey Cantillo still needs to grow. So if he can continue, and then if you can have also Ben Lively be as crazy as he was last year, or find another type of Ben Lively, as long as that all just works, then you're fine. And
I'm
it's
running
just
out
like
of fingers to count on here.
So it's just like you need to go out and get those reinforcements. They'll have a handful of minor league deal guys in spring training that they love to bring in where they have those options. We've seen a Tyler Beatty before. We've seen those types of guys maybe just crack their way in. But it's just like, you need more than that. You need more than the let's cross our fingers and hope that this is going to happen. They need to, and they know it, obviously, but it's just how are they going to get there? Which is why my brain then goes back to, is Josh Naylor the only way that they get that? And like, can they get that out of him? But then it's just like, well, then maybe that might not make sense. And then here we go all over again. So it's just like, how do they get there if they can't spend money? And you now know that there's a bigger question mark. Yes, there's certainty in their broadcast rates next year where they know where it's coming from. But the transition creates a question mark of what does this do to our income? And what does this do to the money flow? Like they had great attendance this year. They had a postseason run. They had all of those things that should help. But there's still a question mark of what does this transition look like now, of how this impacts our income. And maybe it's not directly in 25 and it's more of a 26 issue, but there's still a question mark. So it's like, how do they approach this, and how much can they spend? And if they are spending on someone like Boyd, do they have anything left over to continue to spend? And it's just, it's hard to know. I know.
I mean, that's why you bring in another owner, right? He's trying to help out there.
One would think, right?
You would think so. But the thing that makes this crazy and sometimes frustrating is also sort of a positive, because they have such a good baseline with younger players. And they, as much as I'm not saying don't go target a front of the rotation arm, absolutely do that if it's possible.
Yeah.
But just adding stability there to that rotation helps immensely. Taking some of the you can't expect this bullpen to be as fantastic as they were this year. It's just not possible. You cannot expect that that's going to happen. One, because that's unfair to the relievers in there, and two, because we know how relievers work. Every year a bullpen is different. So just even so many times we've been talking about, oh, you got to find someone that could lead this rotation. Well, I like Tanner Bybee. I like his ability to take another step forward. What this club really needs is a guy that can give them 170 innings of a 3.5 ERA. And if you could find that, God, I feel like that just helps settle everything else down. Even at the end of the year, it seemed like they finally, maybe there was like a 2-week stretch where they finally felt like that rotation, like everything is good, everything is set. Cobb is in here, Boyd is in, and then the wrench got thrown right back into it very quickly. But having that depth, it's so critical for this organization heading into next year.
Yep, and I think they know that they've been very clear that that's number one on their to-do list, and now we just have to sort of see if they actually are able to pull that off.
We had somebody, as I mentioned earlier in our Discord, that wanted to talk just about the relationship with you and Sarah Lang. It's just how you two met and why that relationship is so unique. And we love watching it from afar. It's one of our favorite friendships. But just talk about Sarah, what she means to you. And certainly she's become an inspiration for so many.
Yeah, she has. And it's not even just ALS related, which was a big thing for her, of not wanting to necessarily go public with the diagnosis, because she didn't want to be the ALS girl. Who wants to be that? Like, no one wants to be known for what their disease is or their condition is or whatever illness that they've been dealt. Like, they want to be known for whatever they were before. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that she's an inspiration mostly because of an unprecedented love of baseball. And as I said before, it's so contagious that everyone follows, because they kind of just, I feel like everyone's envious because everyone wants to love something the way that she loves baseball, and most of the world just doesn't have that in them. Like, I don't have that in me, that she had the level that she has, and we all are just like, we kind of wish we were like that with something. It doesn't even have to be baseball. Like, and so it's fun to be a part of that, because you can feel it even through her posts on social media. You can just feel it in her work, no matter what it is. So to have that, I think that's what everyone admires most. And then the fact that she's able to keep that spirit, knowing what her diagnosis is and what her future is going to be, like, it's unbelievable combination of the two. Now for us, we've been friends since 2019. That was my first year on the beat. And she was transferring over from ESPN to MLB that same season. So when I was out in Arizona for spring training, our boss emailed me and said, hey, we have another girl who's starting in a couple weeks, and she's out in Arizona on a trip with her mom. She would she takes a spring training trip with her mom every year since, like, I don't even remember, since like 2000s, maybe like 2010. And so he was like, can you maybe just meet up with her? It would probably be good for both of you to have like somebody, probably another woman in this male-dominated field, I'm sure is what he was going for. But he's like, it's probably good for you guys to meet up. So she was going to the Cleveland, San Francisco game because her family's Giants fans. And so I was like, sure, I'll just message her. And we met up for all of 35 seconds before the game started. We were like, hi. And she's like, hi, I do research and stats. If you ever need anything, just let me know. And I'm thinking, I'll probably need something. So let me just keep her name in mind so I can use her. And then after that, we just sort of stayed in contact with each other and have texted basically every day since then. And because she's in Connecticut, and I'm obviously in Ohio, it's like a long distance virtual friendship for the most part. And we're able to see each other like once or twice a year. But yeah, it's been easy to be friends with that. I mean, how isn't it? And then 2019 was when we first started talking and being friends. And then 2021 was whenever she was diagnosed. So then that somehow even made us closer after that, because it was just like, okay, let's figure out how we're going to get through this together. So it was just another little wrench, but didn't really change anything.
Just speaking for everyone, your guys' friendship is inspirational as well, and we certainly enjoy the two of you, and we always have Sarah in mind, and she continues to do great work, and we love that you two kind of bring out the best in each other. So we appreciate that. One final question I did get: This one came from Carson. What's the order of finish in speed typing tests between Mandy, Zack, and Hoinsey?
Oh, well,
Someone
we know who's
suggested
third.
someone suggested that Hoinsey might be better on Morse code or hieroglyphics, but
Yeah, we know who's third. Can let you fill in that blank. I know what Zach would tell you. I also think I know what I would tell you, and there are going to be different answers. Zach would say it's him 100%.
no,
And
no.
and then we bring him in, and he'll play it like, oh, I wouldn't do that. Yeah, you would. If no one else looking around. I think that needs to be put to the test, though. I think he and I would need to go head to head. But I think the 2-finger poking at the keyboard with Hoinsey, I think he might be a little bit behind on that.
Angrily.
That is true. I don't know how there's not a hole in that keyboard yet, because especially whenever there's like a late game like change, whether it be Class A would blow a save, or whether it be the Guardians have like a walk-off, or even if it's in the 7th or 8th when he has to delete everything, he just starts pounding that keyboard even harder after he mumbles some things that I won't repeat under his breath beside me, because he's in the press box beside me at home.
Yeah.
So that is a treat. I love that man with my whole heart.
I've always said I wish that some way he could have saved in 1997 when he's got Game 7 of the World Series, Indians and Marlins. He's got the whole thing written. And then Mesa blows it, the tie game, Nagy gives it up in extras. Like, I wanted to read that story. If only he could have just Control-S, save that baby. Well, this is 97, so I don't know what he was working on. But just save that baby so I can read it, even though it never happened. I would love to see that alternate universe where the Indians did win the 97 World Series.
Control-S wouldn't be in his work there. He wouldn't know any shortcut. It would be more of going up to File, Save As, picking an area to save, typing it in. That's more the process. But yes, nonetheless, that would still be there.
I mean, all of us have our favorite Hoinsey stories, whether it's wearing 2 belts and figuring it out when he gets there. One of my favorites is also when he discovered that he had his stopwatch on his iPhone running for like 3 years.
I've heard that one.
Why is it going so slow? Oh, Hoinsey, you realize this thing has been going for 3 years? Like, what is happening here?
Oh, we had this year when he showed up to spring training the second time. He comes down at the beginning and at the end. The second time he gets there and realizes that his license expired when he had gone home. And so he went to his rental car. He couldn't get the rental car because you can't get that with an expired license. So Zach and I had to chauffeur him around a little bit. And the kicker was that he said, oh, I did this exactly 30 years ago in the 95 spring training as well. So I was like, you know what? Never change, Hoinsey.
Never change. You also, Mandy, never change. We love the heck out of you. Thank you for being here. Go check out Mandy's stuff at CLEguardians.com, LOB.com, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, TJ. This was fun.